we must realize that unless we're going to up and move, we have a responsibility to the place we are in. It's helpful when we have someone in mind that we're actively connecting with. It's very helpful because then what we do each Sabbath, how we do small group ministry, and how we grow in selflessness, all of these things are done in such a way that not only grows us, but grows this person that we are very specifically aiming to minister to. We do this in very key ways. One of these ways will have to do with how we relate to God. One will be how we relate to each other as already being part of this church community. And one will be how we relate to those outside of our doors, which we currently don't really have. There are three pistons. There's one mission. One mission is the Great Commission. From that one mission, we have three pistons that help that mission to keep functioning. One of those is our weekend experience. The second is life-changing relationships. And the third is surrendered living. For our specific community, our weekend experience enables us to very emphatically For our specific community, our weekend experience enables us to very emphatically tell the truth about God. So we're focusing on this vertical relationship as a church. Our life-changing relationships enable us to walk through life together. So everyone that's part of our community, we create opportunities to make sure we're connecting beyond the worship service. And we do surrendered living, the third piston, by loving our neighbors deeply, okay? So we're all engaged in this. We're all telling the truth about God. We're all walking through life together. We're all loving our neighbors deeply in the most ideal form of these three pistons that are making this Great Commission engine continue to run. We are better able to sustain our life as a church and thrive as a church when we are developing as disciples who disciple others. It's one thing to believe in something. So we can believe that Jesus is a great idea. It's another thing to actually live like it. And that's what the discipleship life is. In this process of being disciples who make disciples, the Holy Spirit sends us these nudges, right? That cause us to be able to say, hey, after, we've been journeying together for so long and talking through various things, as this person has been part of a nurturing space, whatever the thing may be, the Holy Spirit says it's time. And we are finally able to ask, do you think you're ready to make this relationship public through baptism? Now, this is part of the process of discipleship. And once baptism happens, based on a truly converted heart, ideally, we open the door that much wider to the transforming power of God and to his leading of our lives. When we make that public declaration through baptism, we open that door even more. And the journey of discipleship does get harder the longer you're in it, right? And especially after making your commitment public. The devil's not keen on us making our decisions public because he realizes the positive ripple effects. And he will do anything he can to discourage us. So inevitably, once baptized, the journey does become more difficult. And it is in this stage of deeper commitment that a person who's nurturing this person who is a young disciple is better able to tackle the tougher questions about the tougher parts of following Jesus. Before baptism, the journey can be rough for various reasons. Family, friends don't agree with the step that they're taking, don't agree with them worshiping with this group of people. They may oppose them when they say that they are going to get baptized. The journey before baptism may be breezy. Either way, once baptized, the heat rises. With either scenario, whether it's been difficult or easy before baptism, there is a romantic phase in our relationship with God where we live in this space of the highs, right? God has been so good to me, is just so present, ever present. And we don't exist much in the lows that are real parts of our Christian journey too. So when that is the reality, when we have this romantic version of our faith, this romantic stage of our faith, which is still a stage of faith, but it is an early stage of faith, it is a less mature stage of discipleship, okay? But when the road starts to get really rough, even though you're baptized, you become frustrated with God and you experience these doubts, right? That's when the commands of God, the commands of Jesus as laid out in the Sermon on the Mount, seem to make a bit more sense. Now I know why he's talking about this, right? This wasn't an issue to me before when I was in the beautiful haze of love for Jesus, right? When I was living on the mountaintop so often, I didn't get why these were issues that Jesus needed to point out to his disciples and to those looking on. But now I get it. I do not believe that a church that isn't actively filled with disciples who are making disciples can successfully put a lot of attention into inviting others to join our journey. I'll say that again. I do not believe that a church that is not filled with disciples who are actively making disciples can successfully put a lot of attention into inviting others to join our journey. That's what happens with evangelistic series, right? You bring in a good speaker, they say powerful things that convict hearts and truly do. Like, that's not a joke. I'm not being sarcastic about this at all. Like, folks are converted, lives are changed, turned around 180. It's truly incredible. But if the church isn't ready to receive, then those people come in the door and out the door very quickly. Even if they develop relationships, there is a tendency for the people who have come in as a result of an evangelistic series to not stick with things, because they too have been living in a high space, right? They've been living on a mountaintop space. And when they come into a church community that isn't ready to receive them, that mountaintop quickly drops. Like it quickly becomes a valley. And they don't know how to sustain life in the valley yet, right? They haven't been nurtured in a way that helps them understand what that looks like. And there are other things that we could be doing too in terms of evangelism. There's not just the evangelistic series. You know, we could be delivering food boxes. We can be doing Bible studies, right? There are different ways that we enter into the life of others and that they enter into a relationship with Jesus. And ideally, things get to a point where we invite them to become a disciple too. And ideally that happens in the context of a healthy church of disciples who are making disciples. Not a church in which folks are simply coming and consuming on Sabbath morning. Or not a space where people are paying primary attention to the things that matter to them, but not much, if any, attention to things that don't. When we're actually being disciples who make disciples, when we actually live like disciples instead of like idea believers, as I mentioned before, we will become a community that attracts others with and through the power of the Holy Spirit. We will become a place, when we are disciples making disciples, we will become a place, a community that attracts others with and through the sacrificial and unconditional love of Jesus Christ. We can actually believe certain ideas about Jesus are true, but not live in a way that shows we are following him. And the rich young ruler, as we call him in the Gospels, is a great example of that kind of a person, where there's a lot of knowledge, but no devotion. If we're not living as disciples who make disciples, then we haven't understood the Great Commission. And it's very difficult for us to wrap our minds around those three pistons.